she sat there quietly, a young black girl, no older than 16, her hand bleeding from a glass cut. The white nurse walked past her again, pretending not to see. The guards at the corner whispered and laughed. Cameras caught everything. For hours, she waited in pain. Her only mistake? She was black, in a place where black faces were treated as shadows. Then, the door opened. A soldier walked in, not just any soldier, but the one man the world couldn't ignore. Ibrahim Traoré, his boots echoed through the hospital corridor. People stopped talking. No one expected him to show up here, not today, not in that small city hospital. A woman whispered, "That's the president of Burkina Faso." Another nurse straightened her coat, trying to look busy. Traoré's eyes fell on the girl. He didn't need to ask what had happened. The silence of the room told him everything. He walked closer, stood beside her, and asked gently, "How long have you been waiting?" The girl looked up, tears in her eyes. 3 hours, they said, the white patients first. The corridor went silent. Even the guards looked away. Then Traoré turned, his voice calm, but firm like thunder, under control. "Is this how you treat Africa's daughters?" No one dared to answer. For the first time, the room felt small, too small for the kind of truth that had just been spoken. He placed his hand on the girl's shoulder and said, "You will be treated, now." And that moment, the entire world began to talk. Clips from phones spread online within hours. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, flooded with one message. Traoré stood up for her. What started as one girl's silent pain became the voice of millions. Africa saw it. The world heard it. And the system that had been silent for decades finally shook. But that was only the beginning. What Traoré did next left even his critics speechless. Stay with us, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories the world needs to hear. The hospital was meant to be a model of international cooperation. Big banners on the wall read, "Funded by global partners." White doctors walked fast, speaking in English accents, while local African nurses carried most of the work silently. But if you looked closer, you could see the cracks. 2 waiting lines, one for the locals, one for the foreign patients. One side with new equipment, the other side with broken chairs and flickering lights. And there, right between those 2 worlds, sat that young black girl. She had come with her mother after a road accident. The doctors said, "She'll have to wait. The priority list is full." But minutes later, a white tourist with a small cut walked in, and was taken inside immediately. The mother protested, softly, "Please, my daughter is bleeding." But the nurse replied coldly, "We follow international procedure." People around could feel the tension. A few took out their phones and started recording, quietly, nervously. Because in that place, even truth needed permission. Outside the window, a small convoy stopped. The guards didn't know who was inside until the car door opened. Out stepped Ibrahim Traoré, wearing his military uniform, no big announcement, no media crew. He was there for a routine inspection, or so they thought. When he walked through those doors, time seemed to pause. He looked around, saw the contrast, the quiet discrimination that everyone had accepted as normal. And when he reached the girl, something inside him changed. This wasn't politics anymore. It was personal, it was about dignity. He asked one of the white doctors, "Why is this child still waiting?" The doctor replied, "She's not on the international list, Mr. President." Traoré looked at him, calm but cold. Since when did skin color decide who gets to heal first? The room froze. No one had ever spoken like that inside those walls. One nurse whispered under her breath. Finally, someone said it. Within minutes, the girl was taken inside. Doctors rushed to help, not because they cared suddenly, but because they realized who was watching. Traoré stayed there, standing quietly near the door, not as a president, but as a protector. And when the girl's mother thanked him with trembling hands, he simply said, "You don't thank me. You thank Africa for remembering its worth." Outside, the crowd had already started gathering. Someone uploaded the video. And by the time Traoré left that building, the world had already seen what happened. Hashtags began spreading like wildfire. Hashtag Stand with Traoré. Hashtag Black Dignity. Hashtag Africa Speaks. But this was only the beginning. Because what followed next was a reaction that shook both Africa and the West. Within hours, the hospital footage spread like wildfire. It wasn't just another viral clip, it was a spark in a room full of dry wood. Every major platform lit up. Twitter, X, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, all filled with one name. Backhand index pointing right, Ibrahim Traoré. Some called him the Lion of Africa. Others labeled him the man who dared to speak where others stayed silent. News channels couldn't ignore it anymore. CNN, BBC, and Al Jazeera replayed the same 12-second clip. Traoré standing tall in that hospital corridor, pointing toward justice. And saying, "Since when did skin color decide who gets to heal first?" That line became history. It was quoted, remixed, and written on posters across campuses in Africa and America alike. But not everyone was celebrating. In Washington and Paris, politicians looked uneasy. Because this wasn't just about a hospital anymore. It was about power, race, and control. White House officials called it a misunderstanding. European diplomats said it was a local issue exaggerated by social media. But people knew the truth, they had seen the arrogance. The small humiliation that every African had felt at least once in life. Across the continent, something was changing. Students in Ghana held rallies saying, "If Traoré can stand up, why can't we?" In Nigeria, youth groups printed shirts that said, "Proudly Black. Proudly Human." Even in America, the Black community started speaking louder. Talk shows invited African voices for the first time. And hashtags like hashtag Black Unity and hashtag One Africa began trending side by side. Meanwhile, that hospital, once ignored, became a battlefield of opinions. International NGOs rushed to control the story. They posted statements like, "We stand against discrimination in all forms." But the people weren't buying it. Because this time, a leader hadn't spoken from a conference table. He'd spoken from the ground, in a hospital, next to his people. And deep inside, the Western elite knew. If one African leader could defy their system publicly, others might follow. A US analyst on live TV said, "This man is dangerous, not because of weapons, but because he gives people hope." Hope, that was the word echoing across Africa. From Dakar to Nairobi, from the slums to the skyscrapers. Young people whispered. He made them listen. But as Traoré's name rose higher, the pressure around him grew heavier. Behind closed doors, global agencies began to plan. They couldn't let a single act of courage turn into a continental movement. And while the people celebrated, the powerful began plotting. The moment Ibrahim Traoré's video went viral, something shifted in the world's power rooms. The same leaders who once ignored Burkina Faso now held emergency meetings behind closed doors. They didn't talk about the girl. They didn't talk about justice. They talked about control. "We can't let this man become a symbol," one official said. "He's turning rebellion into respect." Emails flew. Calls were made. And within days, the retaliation began. First came the media manipulation. Western outlets started changing the story. They said the video was taken out of context. They questioned Traoré's motives, calling him a populist military ruler seeking attention. But Africans weren't fooled. They had seen too many lies dressed as journalism before. Then came the economic threats. Certain aid partners quietly paused their funds. Reports surfaced that the IMF and World Bank were reviewing Burkina Faso's stability score. In simple words, they wanted to choke him with numbers. Next came the political pressure. Some African leaders were called into private meetings. Whispers spread. "Stay away from Traoré, or your country could be next." But Traoré didn't back down. He gathered his ministers and said, "If helping my people costs us their approval, then let them keep their approval." His courage sparked more anger in foreign capitals. A leaked document later revealed a plan. An operation to limit his influence through diplomatic isolation. And suddenly, international headlines began to change again. Traoré's regime under scrutiny. Questions about Burkina Faso's leadership. Is Africa drifting away from democracy? They used the same old playbook. Demonize, discredit, and divide. But what they didn't understand was this. Traoré's power didn't come from palaces or politics. It came from people. Inside Africa, artists, rappers, and influencers stood up for him. They made songs, posted reels, and painted murals of his hospital moment. Each one carried the same message. You can't silence truth. Meanwhile, Traoré stayed calm. No shouting, no long speeches. Just quiet confidence. A leader who knew he was walking through fire, but refused to burn. He appeared on national TV and said, "They can take our aid, but they can't take our honor. This is Africa's time to rise. Not as victims, but as equals." That night, his words echoed far beyond Burkina Faso. Across Africa, youth felt a new kind of energy. Not anger, but pride. But the West wasn't done yet. When silence didn't work, they turned to something darker. Covert influence and betrayal from within. The closer you get to truth, the more dangerous it becomes. Because what happened next would test Traoré's strength like never before. Traoré had faced the world's gaze before. Criticism, threats, and empty warnings. But nothing shook him more than what came from inside. Even heroes have shadows. Even leaders have walls that whisper betrayal. Some of his own advisors, once loyal, started questioning his decisions. Are we risking too much? This girl incident, it might cost us our lives. It wasn't that they doubted his courage. It was fear of powerhouses thousands of miles away, pulling strings from safe offices in New York, Paris, and London. Leaked documents showed plans to infiltrate his administration. Diplomats tried to bribe officials. Foreign-funded NGOs whispered in ears. You know the consequences if this escalates. Even trusted ministers hesitated. Meetings became silent battles. Some looked at Traoré and wondered, is it worth standing against the world for one girl? But Traoré's eyes were always on the people. He had seen the pain of generations. He had felt the humiliation of Africa ignored. I don't stand for one girl, he reminded them. I stand for dignity, for all of us. And the people felt it too. News spread faster than the plots could unfold. Students, mothers, fathers, young men in cities across Africa took to the streets, online and offline. #StandWithTraoré became more than a hashtag. It was a movement. It was proof that betrayal from within couldn't silence the collective will. Meanwhile, in America, activists amplified the story. They exposed the hidden attempts to influence Traoré's decisions, showing how international systems often tried to control Africa, even under the guise of aid and cooperation. Traoré responded calmly, but decisively. He reorganized his cabinet. He replaced hesitant ministers with those who believed in principle over politics. He tightened security around sensitive decisions, and personally ensured the girl's family received full protection and support. And then, he sent a message the world couldn't ignore. No power, foreign or local, can dictate how we value our people. Africa will not kneel. Not for fear. Not for money. Not for influence. His words ignited a fire. People felt empowered. And even those who had doubted him inside his own walls began to realize they were part of something larger than themselves. The betrayal that was meant to weaken him instead became the catalyst for a stronger, united front. Traoré had survived the whispers and schemes of hidden hands. But the final challenge was yet to come. Because when the world sees courage, it often pushes back harder. The world thought they could silence Africa. They were wrong. After facing the world's criticism, economic threats, and betrayal from within, Ibrahim Traoré stood unshaken. Every move he made reflected courage, dignity, and unwavering principle. The girl, once ignored and humiliated, now walked freely through the hospital corridors. Doctors treated her with care. Nurses smiled without fear. And outside, the world watched a simple truth unfold: justice cannot be silenced. Traoré addressed the nation and the world through a brief but powerful broadcast. We do not bend to fear. We do not bow to influence. One child's dignity is worth more than all the gold in the world. Africa rises when we stand for what is right, for our people, for our children. Across social media, the reactions were overwhelming. #StandWithTraoré flooded timelines in Africa, America, and Europe. Influencers, activists, and ordinary citizens praised his bravery. Even critics began to respect the principle over politics he had shown. But the impact went beyond hashtags. Schools, hospitals, and youth organizations across the continent used the story to teach children about courage, equality, and justice. A young girl in Lagos, watching the video, whispered to her mother, "I can be brave like him one day." In America, African diaspora communities organized solidarity events, showing how one man's action could inspire unity across continents. Traoré himself remained humble. He visited the girl's family personally, ensuring she received proper care and emotional support. He reminded them, "Your courage is Africa's courage. Your dignity is the continent's dignity." The hospital, once a symbol of division and discrimination, now became a symbol of hope. It showed that even in a world where inequality often rules, Courage can rewrite the narrative. And for the people watching from around the world, the lesson was clear. True leadership is not about titles, power, or wealth. It is about standing up for the voiceless. The story of that day became a legend, a movement, and a lesson. One man, one child, one act of bravery changed the conversation across continents. What do you think about Traoré's stand? Could you do the same if the world was against you? Sparkles if this story inspired you. Like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more stories that reveal the truth behind the headlines. Because stories like this remind us all: courage is contagious. Justice is unstoppable. And one brave act can change the world.